Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another 3ABN Presents Up Close. We're coming to you today from Calhoun, Georgia. It's beautiful down here, isn't it?
It certainly is. This is the South.
It sure is.
It's
The Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we have a live audience, and we want to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for coming today. And we have some tremendous topic, I believe a very important topic that we're discussing today.
We sure do. Today, we're going to be talking about how to tame your TV. For many years now, television has been changing the way we communicate, the things we buy, and the things we believe. But here are some statistics, Danny, that should make your blood run cold. According to the A.C. Nielsen Company, the average American watches more than 4 hours of TV each day. Now, that's 28 hours a week, or 2 months of nonstop watching over the course of 1 year. The average person then would have spent the equivalent of 9 years of watching TV by the time they're 65 years of age.
That's terrible.
I mean, 9 years. That's unbelievable. You might be asking yourself, what is it that keeps us glued to the set? Well, violence, for one. By the time the average American child reaches 18 years of age, they will have witnessed between 16,000 and 40,000 murders on TV. Recently, we sent our cameras to a local mall to find out if these statistics are really true, and they came back with some disturbing answers. Here's what the people are saying, and remember, we have a tendency to underestimate the time we spend watching television. Yes.
How much television do you watch each day?
I would say probably about 2 hours.
About 3.
Oh, probably about 5 hours.
Maybe a couple hours, maybe to pop in a movie. That's about it.
I would say maybe at least about 3 hours a day.
I probably don't even watch 15 minutes a day. I check the weather in the morning, that's about it. I'm pretty much busy with work. I go to the gym.
I watch about an hour worth of TV a day.
I usually watch about an hour of TV a day.
Probably 1 to 3 hours, depending on a given day.
I watch, probably 1 hour and a half, 2 hours every day.
Personally, probably about 3 hours.
Almost all day, actually, because she goes to work and I'm at home.
Do you have a standard of what not to watch?
We don't like shows with, with bad language and things like that in it because we don't use that in our home and we don't want her to hear that. So, we try to keep it clean and, family type shows.
No, not really. I like stand-up comedy when I have time, and I like to watch MTV, music videos, stuff like that. Sometimes movies.
I know with the kids, I don't really want them to watch like violence or like scary movies and stuff like that, so they can't watch that. Not for the kids. But for myself, I watch anything that I think is suitable. I can, action movies and stuff like that.
Personally, anything with anyone gay I don't usually watch, so, because I'm not like that, so.
I'm really tired of violence and things that I don't feel are appropriate for my kids.
Not really. I'm pretty open. Like I said, I'm pretty much limited to sports and the premium channels.
We only watch certain programs like MTV and certain things that aren't, usually for little kids. I don't watch, no.
I don't like a lot of violence and a lot of sex stuff I don't like.
Nope. I watch everything.
No, I really wouldn't say so. I mean, if it's something that catches my eye, something that's interesting, I might watch it for a little bit, see if it's interesting. If not, flip it or whatever.
Well, the channels that we get are basically about any family channel. I can't think of any shows offhand that we wouldn't watch. We don't much care for the MTV type shows or some of the new comedy that's out. But basically, we just like watching a lot of the Discovery Channels, History Channels, those types of shows.
Okay, well, very, very interesting to hear the range of how many, and I think probably, as you said a while ago, the statistics actually show we watch more than what we think we do. That's pretty scary.
Of course, we want them to watch 3ABN.
That's right. We'll be talking about that, I'm sure, in a little bit.
So it's not that television is wrong. It's just the choices, how much time we're spending, as the people said.
What you're putting into your mind.
Yeah, and what you're putting into your mind.
Well, our guest today is Jason Sieber. He's a former TV news reporter who has spent a lot of time looking into the effects of television on our lives. He's covered stories as wide-ranging as the death of Princess Diana and the average boring city council meeting. I'm not sure somebody will like that somewhere, but if you've been in city council meetings, some of them are important, maybe necessary. But he's here to share with us some of the basic TV taming principles. Please make him welcome at this time. Come on up, Jason. How are you? Good. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You worked in communications. Do you have a degree in communications?
I do, yes. I have a lot of degrees in a lot of different areas. I have a degree in history, but one of my degrees is a bachelor's degree in journalism with an emphasis in broadcast.
Okay.
And I have been to the seminary.
Seminary, there you go, yeah, okay.
Yes.
So you're one of those.
I believe that it is possible to be born again.
Well, good. That's wonderful. I'm glad we're learning that.
So, Jason, being in this field, why do you think people are watching so much television?
Well, watching television really is a pretty basic instinct. Our lives are stressful. We come home tired. We're looking forward to doing something different. And television gives us a chance to tune out. And not only tune out, but tune into something that you don't have to think in order to enjoy. It's fast, it's easy, it entertains, it makes life seem a little less pressing. And it's probably the most basic drug the average American uses these days.
A drug. Interesting. Well, what goes into making this powerful television programming?
Well, what goes into it is a really basic process of manipulation. The idea is that before we move your mind in television, we really want to move your heart. And even though you'd like to, some of us have actually talked about that in different newsrooms. How do we actually reach the mind? But there's not a lot of time to reach your mind. Just think about how much time. News is my area of specialty, so let's take a look at that for just a moment. News is sort of instant entertainment in many ways. So what you have is basically about 15 minutes of news time. Some of that has to go to sports, some of that has to go to weather. So when you really break it down, you have about 10 minutes to move the day's news.
Okay.
Now you have 5 reporters who are vying up for that 10 minutes, so it's going to cut it down to a maximum of 2 minutes of time for the average reporter. And you're going to be lucky if you get that. A minute and a half is considered generous in my field. So what starts the process is the sound. You want to start off with the sound of the person that's going to be talking. And then as soon as you do that, you lay those sound bites down. You go underneath that and you lay down the most important layer. I should say the second most important layer. So you're going to lay that layer down, which is your natural sound. Your natural sound is going to begin the major process of influencing the mind. If I lay down natural sound that has an ominous character to it, I'm telling you that I'm expressing danger. And it doesn't matter what you're seeing, as long as you're hearing that scary natural sound, you're going to be moved by it. So whether it's music or whether it is some sound of river water, whatever it may be, try to get that natural sound in there. The next layer is going to be the layer of sight. Now, as much as possible, I'm going to try to keep your talking head off the screen. You'll have some visual contact that will set you up, but as soon as we can cut away from that and go and show you something that corresponds to what that person's saying, the better. Now, I have another opportunity to manipulate. So if you're saying one thing, so for instance, let's say you have your average city council member saying, I think we're doing a good job with homelessness. But then I cut away while he's talking about that, and I show a homeless guy reaching in a garbage can. What have I just said?
You've just destroyed everything.
I called him a liar. And nobody even thinks about that. So that's why city councilmen are sometimes a little bit hesitant to talk to us. We have a love-hate relationship. The final piece is something that was developed by a guy named Eisenstein, Sergei Eisenstein, great Russian filmmaker. Prior to him, people used to show everything that went into the film. So when you were making film, if you showed a man getting tied up, you'd show the entire man being tied up, as in Edison's great film, The Great Train Robbery. After a while, they figured out that was a poor use of time, so they began to fragment time. And that's really where we've gone after that. So you'll show a small portion of the activity, and you'll fragment it. Now, we've been becoming more and more fragmented all the time, Kay. So if you watch the extreme end of that, you'd be watching the fragmented reality of MTV. MTV will have probably about half a second of time or less for you to digest a picture. Why do they do that? This is the nub of what makes television powerful. The reason they do that is, number one, to keep you off your feet mentally, all right? So that you're going to be accepting things on a consumer basis as a person who's just being force-fed. You don't have time to think about the images. So you give up and you just start accepting. That makes your emotional response stronger. That's going to sell my advertisements. Number two, it's because it makes you into the final editor of the film. So if you take, for instance, the famous scene from Alfred Hitchcock's film Psycho, where you see a knife being raised, you see a woman's terrified face, you see a foot slipping in the shower, you see something red going down, not even red, it's black and white, but something going down the drain, and you ask people what they saw, and they'll tell you that they saw a murder. But the fact is, they didn't see any such thing. The editor got inside your mind, and you became the final editor, and that's why the images that you've seen in television stick with you. People will describe scenes from television and from the movies and from the news that they never saw because clever editors and clever directors made you make the final cut.
It's scary, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, coming up, we'll be continuing to talk with Jason and get an inside look at the television industry. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Next week on Up Close.
We're going to be talking about the fallout that comes from divorce.
Spent a lot of time crying, of course, and mourning the loss of not just a marriage, but my whole life.
You heard her say she was angry with God for a time.
It was pretty uncomfortable, not knowing whether do I even go up and say hello.
So what do people do? They say, I'm not going to go anywhere where God would be pleased to see me.
Next week on Up Close, recovering from the pain of divorce. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to 3ABN Presents Up Close. Today we're talking to Jason Sieber about taming your TV. How does television affect us? Is it possible to use TV in a positive way, or do we have to throw it out altogether? Jason, you're here as the expert.
Right, the drip under pressure, as Danny likes to say.
What about it?
Yeah.
I mean, the simple thing, it sounds like what you said a while ago, that we just need to throw all televisions out the window. If so, nobody's watching today, right?
Right, and we can all go home right now. It's been nice seeing you all tonight. You're throwing away your televisions. No, it's not as easy as that. Talking about throwing away a television is sometimes like talking about throwing away a grocery cart. You know, and we're going to think about that a little bit later on as we get into the program today, but think about this. When you go to, say, Myers, which is a major store up in Michigan where I live, or maybe Piggly Wiggly, do they have that down here in Michigan? Or, excuse me, Georgia? I'm sorry. Don't wait for me in the foyer. We can talk later. Well, when you go to these places, when you go to a supermarket, you have your supermarket grocery cart. Mm-hmm. And as you're taking that grocery cart down the aisle, you have choices about what you're going to put into the grocery cart. Are you going to put in whiskey? Well, maybe an alcoholic will. Will you put in cheap white bread, or are you going to get valuable things like whole wheat bread and some sort of bottled water? What are you going to put into your grocery cart? The decision is not the grocery cart's, the decision is yours. Unfortunately, for some of television programming these days, you have items that want to jump themselves into the grocery cart, so it gets a little bit more challenging then. It would be like having to go along and you suddenly see that there's a whiskey bottle in my grocery cart. What are you going to do about that? Well, you don't want to leave it there. Here's the analogy, how it breaks down. When you're watching television, you can make some decisions about what you're going to see. Let's say that you like to watch 60 Minutes, a great program where you're going to learn a lot about our country. But while you're watching 60 Minutes, let's say some sort of program comes on for a cop show that shows graphic violence. Well, they're of course going to show you the worst part of that graphic violence. So what do you do then? Are you going to leave that in your grocery cart? Are you going to continue watching, going down aisles that throw that into your grocery cart? Or are you going to make a decision to switch over and watch something that's safe all the time, like most of the time PBS is, or 3ABN for that matter?
So, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about what the person at the mall is saying about this. So let's go back to the mall where we asked people and talked about how they thought about television, what they thought that was doing to affect their families. And once again, we got some surprising answers.
How do you think television is affecting you and your family?
Well, I think adults can pretty well know how it affects them, to know, like, if anything's bad or violent, they can handle it. But young children, I think it affects them a lot. That we should watch what they watch.
I could use the word, sitting in front of it can make you dumb. I don't know, you just kind of get zoned into the TV, don't really get out, do stuff, learn about things. I mean, there's stuff on there for little kids that might learn stuff here and there, but I don't think it's really that good, honestly.
I don't know.
Not a whole lot, really. I mean, I got a busy life, so I don't have too much time for it.
Well, I think it keeps us from probably doing more reading. As far as other items, I don't know that it stops us from doing them very much, because we, when the weather's nice or even when it's raining, we go more for drives or just to get out of the house to some degree. We don't use TV as a, well, this is what we got to do type thing.
I don't think very much, honestly. TV's kind of for entertainment, and I try to teach them things on the lessons of life that they're supposed to learn from me or from their mother. And I don't think they're influenced much by TV. They know it's fiction, it's not real. So I don't think very much.
I think that it affects a lot because anything that she watches, she picks up on. So if it's something positive, she, repeats it or acts it out. So whatever she's going to see, that's what she portrays.
Well, it depends on what we watch, if it's something violent or something like that, which there's outgoing things on violent programs and stuff like that, so we try not to watch violent programs for her, so she grows up in a nice, secure environment,
I think it affects our family because I think TV can be an inspiration to people, and also I think if there's certain programs that they're watching, it influences their everyday life.
Usually, like I said, I like funny things, so I don't like to cop other comedians' material, but I think the comedy affects me in a positive way.
I really don't see no kind of effect, It's just, I just enjoy watching it.
About me, I don't think so, but about the kids, probably the kids from 2 years old, 2 years old.
Some of the things that are on TV concern me, but we just try to watch to make sure that whatever's on is something that's okay for her to watch, or something that we feel like is okay even for us as adults. There's so much trash on TV that we don't like.
I think it affects us quite a bit. That's why there are things that I don't want my children to see. And sometimes it's hard because my 19-year-old will be watching a program that I don't want my smaller kids to watch. So we have, some debates over that type of thing, or they have to leave the room or whatever. But unfortunately, I feel like television in general and video games and everything have really affected our younger people as a whole a lot. But you feel so small, like what can I possibly do to get anything changed?
We would like to convince ourselves that television does not affect our children because there are so many things that, quote, we might like to watch that we know isn't good for us, but we might like to watch it. And the children are right there, and they are watching. It's really scary to hear people talk about how it does affect their children and influence their children.
I think it's even maybe worse when they think it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say that it okay, well, it affects their kids, but the others say it doesn't affect my kids. I don't see. One lady even said, well, I don't see that it affects me. I just watch.
Well, let me tell you right now, that's not why advertisers pay the big bucks, is because they don't think it affects you.
Okay.
We think it does affect you. Really, if you spend time with anything like this, it is going to have an effect on you. And some people have asked me, Am I being manipulated by television? That really is the core issue here. Am I being manipulated? And the answer is, yeah, big time.
Yeah.
You are being manipulated. Well, okay, are you sure I'm being manipulated? Sure, let's take a look at that. Why do people go to the television or to the video store or to the, well, let's say the theater for that reason? It's because they want to find something that's going to make them laugh, or something that's going to make them cry, something that's going to make them feel the drama of life. What is all that? That's manipulation. But people are looking for manipulation. They're wondering, how can I go and find a way to manipulate my life so I don't feel the way I'm feeling right now? I want to feel differently, and I want to be horrified. I want to laugh. I want to feel dramatic. I want to experience something other than what real life has to offer right now.
So they may have a need inside, and instead of finding the Lord's help to fill that need, or a positive help, they're just wanting to just black out everything and just be entertained.
Well, yes, in part. You know, we have to first resolve the question, though: is manipulation always a bad thing? Manipulation basically means to move something. When you go on 3ABN, let's be honest, you're trying to manipulate somebody. You're trying to manipulate them into considering Christ as their Savior. When you sing a song, does it touch people's hearts? I hope so. If you're touching their hearts, that's a form of manipulation. Really, the question is not whether manipulation is a good thing or a bad thing, or is being moved a good thing or a bad thing. It's a question of who am I being moved by, and what am I being moved to? If you're being moved by Christ and the Holy Spirit, that's the kind of movement I want. That's the kind of manipulation I want in my life. If I'm being moved by the other force, and first you have to believe there's another force. If you believe there's a Satan, then you ought to believe that he wants to manipulate you. If you're being moved by a government, you ought to ask, what kind of government am I being manipulated by? You need to be conscious of manipulation, not indifferent to it.
I'm sure that you've heard of these tests, and you may have heard it too. Years ago, and I heard this probably 15, 20 years ago, that theaters tried this out. While they're showing a movie, they would put the slightest, like 100th of a second, so much that the eye didn't even see it, show some popcorn. You're watching the movie and you subconsciously see the popcorn, but you don't even know that you saw it. They put in these quick little, did you read that? They put in these quick little, and they would do it ever so often, and they tested it on theaters across the country, and as soon as they'd take a break, the people would go out by the droves and eat popcorn. They didn't even know they saw any popcorn. You could only see for a split second as the movie was going. As you said a while ago, they saw things they didn't. This time, they didn't think they saw popcorn, but they really did. But it happened so fast, they blended it in. Now, they manipulated that, and they started doing that in theater companies all over, and then they did it with sodas, with Pepsis or whatever, colas. And so it sold a lot more. So they were manipulating them for a reation.
You know, what I want to know is, how do you minimize this manipulation?
Good question. The major manipulation that we experience is not the subliminal kind that you're talking about, Danny. That's out there. That takes a lot of work, and it probably has a pretty minimal effect from most of the studies I've read. I typically get manipulated to buy popcorn by smelling people eating popcorn. That's just, I don't know about you, but that's me. The major manipulation that we're concerned about, I believe, as Christians and as people who watch what's out there, is the kind of manipulation that's very intentional and very obvious. And we need to learn how to ask intelligent questions. The major answer to stopping manipulation that you don't want is to ask the intelligent question, what are they not showing me? What are they not saying? What are they not talking about right now? What are they showing me? What are they saying? And how does all of this come into an expression of a person's worldview? Now, we journalists are famous for saying, we don't have a worldview. We're just trying to be unbiased reporters. Baloney. That's not real.
It's true. My friend's a newspaper writer, and he says, we never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That's right.
And so that's...
Back in the days when I was doing TV news, the old line was, if it bleeds, it leads. We do want to move people, and we want them to see our perspective. When I choose to take a camera out there and talk about the city and how prosperous it is, it makes a big difference whether I show bums eating out of garbage cans or whether I show people building a high-rise building downtown. One shows optimism, the other shows pessimism. Every time we show something in media, we show it at the exclusion of showing something else. We have narrow vision. What did I choose to show you, and why did I show you that? Unlike real life, where you just happen to see things, television is sweated over scene by scene, and movies frame by frame. Everything in that frame is there for a reason. It's there intentionally, and you ought to ask the question, why?
You know, as a mother, I'm thinking, how powerful now is this television in terms of the violence we see, etc., for people to actually follow it, for our children to actually do what they may have seen on the television screen?
Well, that's a good question. How powerful is television in making us follow principles that it's laying out for us? Well, again, the answer is complex, folks. It's a question of the magic bullet theory. Is this something that can make me do what I otherwise would not have done? And the answer is, it depends. It really depends. There's a barrage of information that hits us every day in media. And let's be honest, what typically happens as a result of watching too much media is that we become passive as opposed to active. People aren't more likely to get up and run out and do something like vote or march in the streets or picket or anything. They're more likely to say, I wonder what's on the next channel. That's how people become who've watched television. So in a way, they become far more passive. Now you might say, what's the harm in that? Well, it can be a lot of harm. They've noticed that children who've watched a lot of violence and have become passive to violence aren't always necessarily more likely to hit, which is, by the way, statistically true. They are more likely to hit. But more than that, they're more likely to do nothing when somebody else is getting hit. They're more likely to sit back and sit passively while somebody else is getting clobbered. And that can go right on up into adult life. You can remember the story of Kitty Genovese, who was being killed in the streets of New York. And dozens of people literally watched her dying, didn't do a thing, didn't call anybody. That's the kind of response media breeds in us. Yes, it can hurt us, not necessarily by sending us into action, but sitting us out of action.
Wow. Yeah. Well, coming up next, we're going to be talking with Dr. Brunel Baldwin, a brain scientist, and he's going to be talking about children and how they are affected by TV. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Has your TV taken over your living room and your schedule? Do you find that family dinner often ends up in front of the TV? If so, we have just the book for you. Learn how you can tame your TV by reading View at Your Own Risk. For your free gift, just write to us today at Up Close, Post Office Box 220, West Frankfort, Illinois, 62896, or call during regular business hours, 800-752-3226 or 618-627-4651. Ask for Up Close offer number 10.
Welcome back to 3ABN Presents Up Close. We'll be talking about taming your TV. How does television affect us? Is it possible to use TV in a positive way? Or do we have to just throw it out altogether?
No. We don't have to throw it out altogether. They're watching 3ABN right now. I'm sure that it's okay to watch some. Jason's our expert. He'll tell us that, and Dr.
Right.
Baldwin, I hope, pretty soon.
But when it comes to children and television, most of us realize that, like it or not, the TV set has become the main babysitter in America. And with it comes all sorts of problems. So how much do they watch? And once again, here's what our friends have to say about this in the mall.
Do you have children at home? And how many hours a day do they watch television?
Yeah, they watch TV in their room. They watch cartoons. Probably about 3, 4 maybe.
Oh, probably 4 or 5.
I don't know, probably 5 because she's sleeping most of the time.
She probably watches about the same amount on any given day. She's involved in sports a lot, so between going to school, sports practice, and any of the games that she may be involved in, there'll be days that she doesn't turn on the television.
4 or 5, but they are in and out of the rooms, and they don't really concentrate on anything. Probably if they sat down and watched a program, probably be about 3 hours maybe.
Probably 4 or 5 hours every day.
Do you supervise what your children watch?
Oh, definitely. Yes, yes.
Yes, I do. I don't let them watch things that are rated not appropriate for their age group.
Typically, not so much. I think their mother supervises most of their television activities, and of course, not anything that is past PG-13.
She's mom. She get a control. Yeah, but sometimes I help her, you know.
Yes, I do.
I usually try to get her to watch, like, kids programs, but, usually it's what we watch.
Usually, yes. It's mostly just cartoons and stuff, though.
How old are your children, and do they have a television set in their room?
Yeah, my daughter, she is 7 years old. Yeah, she watch a lot of TV.
I have a 9, 11, and a 19-year-old. They do, but it's a VCR, and they can only watch videotapes in there.
9, 5, and 2. Yes.
No, there's one in the family area, which is just down the hall from her room, that she has access to.
I got one that's almost 14, one that's almost 11, and a 2-year-old. Yeah, they watch TV in their room. They watch cartoons.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's interesting because what they're not telling you in that there, as we were watching, is that kids, by the time they have reached 18 years of age, have not only seen 16,000 murders, which apparently the parents weren't watching out for. That's 16,000 uncaught murders that your kids had to watch. But they're seeing over 200,000 acts of violence, including rape and all kinds of terrible things happening out there in the television. And you know that most kids, the majority of kids, are not watching the same thing when mom and dad are in the room that they are watching when mom and dad are not in the room. That is from psychological studies that have been conducted on multiple occasions.
And then when you put the television set in the child's room, there is no supervision,
That's
or
right.
there probably is no supervision.
Let's just say this. Putting a television set in a kid's room is a dumb, dumb idea. And people who do it are really not using their heads.
A recent report on CNN says that 44% of 3-year-olds watched 1 to 2 hours of TV each day. 27% watched 3 to 4 hours, and 21% watched over 5 hours each day. And now researchers have discovered that every hour preschoolers watch TV each day boosts their chances of about 10% of developing attention deficit problems sometime later in life, if not right then.
Sure.
We asked the folks at the mall about this, and here's what they said.
In recent news reports, television has been cited as causing attention deficit disorder. Are you concerned?
I've been watching it, yes, I've seen it, so I don't know if is it proven that kids are coming up with attention deficit disorders because of TVs. Well, I know what they watch because I keep track of that, and we don't watch much television anyways, so.
No, I actually haven't paid attention to it, so no.
Yeah, I seen that on TV last night. Well, one I've got with attention deficit, and the other one watches as much, and it doesn't affect him.
Not at this point, because I don't have children at that age. And if I had grandchildren, it would make a difference, because I believe that there's a lot of truth in that. Flipping the channels, running out when the commercials are on. I think all of those things affect not being able to focus on whatever they're doing.
I saw that on the news the other day, and I really agree with that, because children I don't think they use their minds, and they play a lot and figure things out on their own when they're just stuck, watching a TV all the time. I think that they need to learn things on their own instead of just being programmed with, what you want them to see on TV.
Barely. I've heard limited information about that. However, since I'm a psychology major, I've heard that it doesn't necessarily, it's a very small significance correlation in violent TV watching and violent behavior. I find it concerning, but I think ADD and ADHD have been blown a little bit out of proportion. Kids that don't have it have been diagnosed with it in the recent years. But I think that it is concerning.
Not really, because I feel like it's probably more cartoon type programs that would cause that, because everything is so quick, changes very fast. So my kids were allowed to watch like Sesame Street and Noggin programs, things that were more geared towards learning and not the programs that were cartoons or the things like that. And that's what we're doing with the grandbaby too, is trying to keep her away from cartoons and more on learning type things.
I have heard that before. I don't know how factual that is. I mean, I'd have to take your word for it. Definitely, if it was proven, then I would probably limit their television even more.
Amazing responses there.
Yes.
You know, it sounds like if it's a program where children learn something, then we're not going to worry about it. And yet, some programs like Sesame Street is very fragmented, like you mentioned, which is one of the manipulation techniques.
That's correct.
And I think it's interesting, Danny, to contrast that with the programming that is being done on 3ABN for children.
Yes.
Tiny Tots.
Kids Time.
You watch the segments. They are not fragmented segments. And I think that's really very important to realize.
I think the thing that jumped out from this, to my mind, was the idea that everybody that we just saw thought it was somebody else's kid that was being hurt.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we all have to take a close look at ourselves. I mean, somebody's kid out there is that average kid who has seen 200,000 acts of violence, including rape and murder, and 16,000 murders by the time they're 18, 8,000 by the time they're leaving elementary school. And that is going to have an effect. Wherever you meet it, it's going to have an effect. Kids are being affected by what they see. The consumers know it. The people who sell our consumer items know it. Parents know it too.
Parents do that because I've noticed myself that I've never seen a parent say, my kid's a bad influence on other ones. They always say their friends have been a bad influence on them. They hang around bad friends. Have you ever heard the one say, my kid is messing up other kids? You know, we always think it's ours.
Guys, I hate to interrupt you, you know, but we could let you go on. But you know what? I've got a friend who's a real expert in this area. Dr. Burnell Baldwin is here with us. And I think it might be really great if we bring him on right now and hear from the expert explain to us what about all this research in ADD, attention deficit disorder?
And Dr. Baldwin is a brain scientist.
Yes. Now I've got a helper here under this cap, namely the human brain. Now this is a professional model. There's nothing styrofoam about this. And if you bought it, you would for sure know it. Here comes the brain out of a bony box. There it is, 3.5 pounds currently. Enix was bigger. 3.5 pounds is 180 grams heavier in men than it is in women. Now let's take a look at inside. In front we have 2 eyes, and we have 1 million living wires from each eye that go to the brain. This is why the eyes are the major avenue to the soul. Inside the brain, here's the way the brain is put together. And the information comes to the back of the head where you physically see. Areas 17, 18, and 19 of Brodmann are under my fingers there. That's where you physically see.
Okay.
You mentally see when other wires go from the back of the head to the side of the head, here. That's where the mind gets to work on it. Now, the spiritual faculties, they're in front. And one of these, called the will, is under my fingers there, as proven by German neurologists after the First World War. Now, I would like to make a distinction. The media are trying to manipulate, but your will is in charge of your brain. And so, if you're in Nazareth, the environment can be terrible, but you can come out of it because of a will. you see. So the name of the game is really persuasion, not just manipulation. So we can choose to see 3ABN instead of the Junk Company Incorporated. See, this can really make a difference, a big difference indeed. Now, you mentioned the young brain.
Yes.
Here's some news about that. The basic circuits in the brain are gelled. A circuit is an electronic wheel. This is gelled when the child is 3 years of age. So if the child, instead of being on mother's lap, in daddy's toolbox, in mother's kitchen, in the sandbox, making things, doing things, exploring the real world, see, that has touch, sound, sight, feeling, experience, they become passive, like you say, back you 100%. So instead
Praise the Lord.
Instead of developing a passive brain, what we want to do is to develop curiosity.
Yes.
Personhood. We want them to decide and to do things and to grow up naturally instead of becoming a funnel. We would like them to be more filter in their capacity and more choosing. Ramon Cajal, a famous Spanish brain scientist, showed that there are wires that go from the brain out to the retina. So people see what they want to see. Ask the neighbors. People hear what they want to hear.
Ask the neighbors, he says.
Ask your enemies.
So then how does this really affect the child sitting there watching? How would a child be different who watched a lot of television versus a child who was able to touch things, and what would the difference be?
Dramatic. The frontal eye fields are right there, under my finger, in a circle. In health, the frontal eye fields guide the eye. They shape the visual experience. But in television, what the establishment wants is for each of our brains to become a funnel. They pour the commercials in the top, and the money comes out the bottom. This is what they're after.
And it's working.
Yes.
What did they pay for a half of 30 seconds at the Super Bowl?
Well, I don't know, but I know what they saw in those 30 seconds in the
like
Super Bowl.
A few million or something like that dollars just for 30 seconds.
Yes. But now, here are some ways, and I'm sure people are onto it. When you put the Bible on television and people are reading the text, you know, for God so loved the world, this is entirely different than the funnel business because you're reading and you're hearing. And if we encourage people to read the Bible when we're speaking to them or when we're explaining to them, this will also help. Another thing that helps is this: balance, moderation. And may I use the term horse sense? You know,
common horse sense.
Yes.
Now, we've been talking about children, but what's the difference between what children watch and what parents should watch? The effect that it has on
the brain?
them.
It's very simple. The brain is plastic, and a lady brain scientist in Berkeley, Dr. Diamond, showed that you can grow better, longer dendrites until you're 92 years of age. So the brain is always plastic. It's always plastic, and it can be modified. But the most plasticity is before 3 years of age. So to dump Babylon into the brain before 3 years of age is a catastrophe in plain English.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. In just a moment, we're going to find out what our live audience thinks about this. And we're going to take their questions, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Next week on Up Close.
We're going to be talking about the fallout that comes from divorce.
Spent a lot of time crying, of course, and mourning the loss of not just a marriage, but my whole life.
You heard her say she was angry with God for a time.
It was pretty uncomfortable not knowing whether do I even go up and say hello.
So what do people do? They say, I'm not going to go anywhere where God would be pleased to see me.
Next week on Up Close, recovering from the pain of divorce. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to 3ABN Presents Up Close. Our topic today is taming your TV. We've heard about how powerful television is, how many hours the average viewer is watching, and even about new studies on the relationship between TV and attention deficit disorders in our children and in our youth. But right now, we want to open up the program for questions from our audience. I think we have some good ones.
We do. We have a young lady out here. Can you give us your name, hon?
Hi, my name is Charlene Loran. And my question is, do you consider TV a peer pressure?
Do we consider TV to be peer pressure? You know, that's a good question. And peer pressure is a good name for television. Television doesn't necessarily force us to do things, but it suggests things, just like peer pressure does in school. And it sometimes helps us to reinforce ideas that we may have. And so, for instance, it was media that really helped Hitler to get the German people to go and attack the Jews. All right? If you ever study that in school, you'll learn that. So, did that mean that he made them do it? Not really, folks. He didn't make them do it. Anti-Semitism went way back in German history. But he suggested ways to do it, and he intensified the anti-Semitic feelings. So, yes, I think peer pressure is an excellent choice of words for television.
Okay. All right. Well, we have another question. And give us your name and where you're from.
My name is Zeola Alston, and I'm from Huntsville, Alabama.
All right. We're happy that you're here.
A retired teacher has taught a number of these ADD children. Since we have so many of them in the classroom now, my question is, should not our classrooms be structured to include them in our classroom, in our studies, rather than holding them in a classroom from 2 to 3 hours at a time and trying to make them sit still?
I think I'm going to defer that one to you, Dr. Baldwin.
About attention deficit disorder, 1, there are many causes. 2, we only know a few of them. Television make a contribution to this because of short-circuiting normal development. But to hang all the attention deficit problems of America on television would be a mistake, certainly. There's a lot of epigenetics, there's a lot of genetics involved, there's a lot of developmental issues involved, and there's a lot of chemical and electronic issues involved, and so we shouldn't scapegoat the problem. Nonetheless, if particularly boys and girls, if they have this problem,
is there?
What?
Boys and girls. Excuse me.
Men and women.
Okay.
Thank you, Kay. Because adults have it now, too.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm in it. I got it.
What they need is action to put the brain back together again. You see? Gardening, building things, making things, doing things, going places, instead of sitting and having cellulose poked into their brains.
Okay. So active classrooms, a lot of gardening, a lot of hands-on
out of the
activities.
classroom.
Yes, and get out and do something, use your hands and all of that. As
Don't
she's saying.
count Washington and big bucks to solve this problem.
Like it.
Okay, all right. We have another question. Give us your name, please.
Malcolm McCrillis from Roan Mountain, Tennessee.
Good, we're glad you're here.
One of the annoyances on a personal level for me is background music that is being played during like commercials and other activities in radio and television, more probably on radio than television. I just wondered why they do this.
That's a good question. The reason we do that is because we want to suggest to you that you feel good about our product that we're moving. So when we have Kodak film, we're not going to say, isn't Kodak film nice? Doesn't it make a lovely picture with a high quality shot? We want you to say, when I use Kodak, It reminds me of our family reunion and eating watermelon and those nice kids down the block we used to ride bikes with. And they can do that by suggesting music that takes you there.
Okay, so they naturally, it's again manipulation to make you feel good about their product.
Danny, you have a much better chance of moving the product if a person feels good when they're seeing the product. They won't even remember what the product has going for it on an intellectual basis, but they'll know that when they saw that product on television, they felt good, so that when you see the logo name, you have this wave of feeling that comes over you.
All right, good. All right, thank you. All right, next question.
Yes, my name's Vanessa Harvey. And how powerful is the media? And can it have effects on us that we would otherwise do and make us do other things?
I like that question. Will it make you do things you wouldn't have done otherwise? Well, sometimes media is projected to be the sort of magic bullet that when they shoot it off, you'll do anything they suggest to you. But they found during World War II that it was impossible to teach people to do things they were not open to at least a little bit. For instance, you can't make Jews hate Jews. You can make Germans hate Jews if they have some disposition to do that. But if a person has any openness, suggestion does play a huge part, and so does the reinforcement that comes after that suggestion.
Okay, Dr. Baldwin, do you have any comments to that about the manipulation or about the fact the question she just asked?
Yes. Next.
Next.
That means you covered it well, Jason. That's what that means. Okay, all right. We have a young man here. What's your name and where are you from, son?
I'm James Gertner, and I'm from Kennesaw, Georgia. And I just want to know what are some good ways of choosing my programs that I watch on TV.
Good question. That's one I was hoping somebody would ask here. What you don't want to do, let's start with that. Don't make your decision while you're flipping through the channels. Don't make your decision before you've taken time to think about your decision. Study the program. Before you let your kids watch the program, don't take TV guides' word for it. Watch it with them before you let them sit there and watch programs without your attendance in the future. Another thing, write down your values. Now I'll tell you what my values are. My values can be found in the Word of God. So I'd take the Big Ten, right, the Ten Commandments, and think about, does this television program extend my values to my children or to my life? If it's not, I don't think I'd watch it. Make sure that the values you believe in are being promoted by the television program you're choosing to watch. Another thing, make sure that you ask questions. Now you may be saying, oh, I'm too tired to ask questions when I'm watching television. Then don't watch TV. It's a big duh moment. If you don't want to be manipulated, then don't watch it when you're tired, because when you're tired, you are going to be manipulated a lot more easily than if you're awake and alert and asking questions. Don't watch television programs that try to fragment reality so much that even if you are awake and conscious, there's no way of keeping pace with the imagery and the suggestion. Make sure that you take some time to be able to understand that imagery and suggestion. And finally, I would say don't assume that the television program you're watching has no agenda. It has an agenda. Ask yourself whether it is your agenda, whether it matches up with God's agenda if you're a Christian. If it doesn't, shove it.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left, and what we'd like to do is maybe ask you each for maybe a minute or so some final thoughts on this program today. Jason, let's start with you.
One of the things we haven't talked about is the good that television can do. One of the good things that television can do is it can present with you in just a few moments with a wide variety of educational topics. In 2 minutes of television, you can learn more than some people can learn in 20 years of reading books. And so television is a powerful medium. If used correctly, it should be used. Another thing I think we ought to notice about television is that when you're watching television, it's important to watch things that vary with your worldview somewhat. So if you're a Democrat, watch things that are put out by Republicans as well. If you're a Republican, watch things that are put out by Democrats. If you're an American, try to listen to the BBC once in a while. If you're listening to the BBC, try to see what's out there. So vary your media input so that one channel, one set of minds aren't making all the suggestions to you. Finally, I want to say something, one last little piece, if I might. Look, not everything in the Bible is appropriate for your child to read. I would suggest not going over the book of Judges right away. There's some stories in there that if they were rated in television would be NC-17, and they are described in a way that you don't want your child to hear. Time and place needs to come into place. There are things that are rated R out there in television land or in the movies. This is Schindler's List, which would probably be helpful for a college student who's trying to learn about the Holocaust and to teach people not to repeat the sins of the Holocaust that are not appropriate for kindergartners to see. So make sure that you take into consideration time, place, and audience. Choose wisely.
Wow. All right, Dr. Baldwin?
Yes. I like his point of the 10 big pillars from the 10 Commandments. Beautiful. Lasts forever. Another thing along the same line is Philippians 4:8. Whatsoever things are true and honest, the things that are beautiful and noble, enduring, and will put excellence into your family instead of Babylon. Good idea.
Okay. Very good. We want to thank both of you for being here. Jason Sieber, Dr. Burnell Baldwin, and we'll be back in just a moment with some closing thoughts, so stay with us.
Has your TV taken over your living room and your schedule? Do you find that family dinner often ends up in front of the TV? If so, we have just the book for you. Learn how you can tame your TV by reading View at Your Own Risk. For your free gift, just write to us today at Up Close, Post Office Box 220, West Frankfort, Illinois, 62896, or call during regular business hours, 800-752-3226 or 618-627-4651. Ask for Up Close offer number 10.
Welcome back. We just wanted to give a final thought, a closing thought, I believe. And I think, Kay, you're a doctor, and your specialty is child development, right? What do you think about what you've seen here today and heard?
I'm excited about what I heard because we didn't just condemn the media, which so often happens, but we said let's take a really good look at what our children are watching, what we're watching, because our children will basically watch what we're watching. And I think when we take that choice, that will that Dr. Baldwin talked about, and make a good choice, we can be better people because of it.
So what we want to do is prepare our children, not only our children, but ourselves for eternity by taking in the good things that there's pure and lovely and true, and those are spiritual things, of course. Yes. Well, our time is all gone for today. Until we see you next time, may the Lord richly bless you abundantly more than you could ever ask or think.